All right, so welcome everybody. I'm Laura. I run operations at Auggie, and I'm so glad that everybody was able to make it today. At Auggie, we're all about supporting parents through every stage of their journey, and finding reliable, high-quality childcare is a huge part of that. So today we're joined by three amazing experts who are leading the way in all things childcare and childcare solutions. Kate from Hello Nanny. Hello Nanny is all about matching families with trusted caregivers. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves and be more eloquent with their company descriptions. And then Lauren is the CMO at Vivi, which is offering exceptional childcare and early learning with a flexible employer-supported options. And Joan, co-founder of Boomo, which is a tech-driven childcare marketplace for on-demand and flexible care. So we'll be diving into their insights on navigating childcare landscape and making it work for your family. We'd love to know where you're calling in from, how old your children are, and feel free to drop any questions that you have for our panelists in the chat. So I will kick it off with Kate.
Saying thank you, Laura. I'm Kate Georgalis. I am the Director of Partnerships for Hello Nanny. I have two daughters myself. My youngest is actually turning 4 next week, and my oldest turned 6 this summer in June. And I joined Hello Nanny a little over 9 months ago. We are a boutique nanny agency that supports families nationwide. And we were founded by Stephanie Fornaro, and the company was really inspired by her experience, seeing firsthand how transformative having help was for her, especially as she navigated postpartum depression herself. And so, we have this beautiful team of moms who are deeply passionate about changing the narrative around building your village and how it really can look so different for families at different times of their career, across different seasons of parenthood. And we focus on supporting families through two primary offerings. One is our concierge placement service, where we do sort of all of the end-to-end things that go into finding a caretaker like a nanny or a family assistant. And we also have DIY support where families really lead the charge, but do it with expertise and guidance and a clear roadmap from our agency team as well.
Amazing. Lauren.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Um, like
Uh-oh, we maybe lost.
branding and
Oh,
family
there we go.
experience. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, you just froze for
And
a quick second.
oh, sorry. Okay. Um, and for about 5 years and built it ground up. We have 11 schools now for ages 0 to 5 across New York and Westchester. And then we also work with employer partners to build not only on-site care, but also service backup care nationwide for employees to stay in the workforce. And so really supporting parents with an emphasis on moms, of course, and really trying to make childcare more accessible and affordable for as many parents as humanly possible. And I have a 6 and a 9-year-old, so
Oh,
I've been through all the ups and downs of nanny, group childcare, etc. Now kindergarten, thank God.
oh my gosh, all the things. And Joan, tell us about Boomo.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Joan. I'm the CEO and founder of Boomo. Boomo was many, many things. So we started off as a co-working space with on-site childcare, pivoted during the pandemic to online learning, went back to childcare and co-working. And the latest iteration of Boomo that we've been working on for the last few years is an instantly bookable marketplace. So we are very focused on partnering with the best of the best providers, whether that's in-home daycares, camps, or center-based locations, and merchandising their slots and making them instantly bookable online. So we're actually the first ever instantly bookable platform. You could literally wake up one morning and just book childcare for the day of.
Wow, that's incredible. So many mornings I wish I had that option. Okay, so let's start kind of with the basics. There's so many different types of childcare available. Kate, can you I'll kind of go around to everybody, but Kate, can you start by how should parents begin to even figure out which one is the right option?
So I like to really encourage parents to not think about one as the right option, because
Hmm.
ultimately so many of us need a variety of options to lean on through different seasons of parenthood, different seasons of career. So I think it's really helpful to educate yourself on all of the options that are available to you, so that as your needs change, as your children's needs change, you feel more aware of the options that you can lean into. When it comes to a nanny or family assistant, we find that they're really a great choice for families in many different seasons of parenthood. So whether you're working full-time, part-time, or you have a parent that's home with children full-time and they need extra support, um, the need for care really evolves as kids grow. So in infancy and toddlerhood, a nanny can provide one-on-one care, a structured routine. There's more flexibility if you have more particular hours that may not
Hmm.
align with traditional childcare centers. But then, as kids reach certain ages, a lot of parents, I was one where I started with a part-time nanny, and over time we transitioned our kids to a Montessori preschool, and I needed less full-time support from the nanny, but I still needed some support to navigate the season of my career that I was in. So, when you're managing the challenging shifts of half days or holiday breaks, summer closures, before and after school care, a part-time nanny or even a family assistant can really help to bridge those gaps
Hmm.
when it comes to continuity and homework help and all of the sort of odds and ends.
Definitely. Lauren, can you kind of dive into some of the myths, the biggest myths about daycare, and what does high quality center-based childcare actually look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a ton of myths, especially in the States versus Europe and other parts of the world where high quality childcare and high quality government subsidized childcare exists. But in at Vivi and really through my experience with my own kids there too, I think one of the biggest things is that childcare and early education, or daycare and early education, are separate, but truly c- it's fully learning focused from the very beginning, even from an infant stage. And that curriculum focus led by expert teachers and then paired with the socialization aspect, I think, is something that parents are often most surprised by.
Mhm.
That is really powerful from a very, very young age. I think people can be really nervous about group care from an infant age, but it's really incredible to see babies reach their milestones and really start to build that trust, not just with um, one parent or one caregiver, but with a really trusted group community. So introducing that community feel and that caregiving from a variety of trusted adults, I think, is a really powerful thing that people don't often think of as a benefit of group care, where you're really building that confidence and sort of self-actualization from a very, very young age.
Yeah, definitely. Joan, how does a hybrid model kind of like Boomo offer flexibility that works, and who do you feel it's best suited for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Bumo offers either on-demand flexible care. So we like to say we just offer flexible care. So that could be on-demand, sort of like backup care. Today, the nanny is sick or
Mhm.
school's closed. Like next Monday, I didn't know spring break extended through Monday next week. That was a
What a
surprise.
fun
I
surprise.
know, what a fun
Yeah.
surprise. And so there's situations like that, or we have, families who are traveling a lot. I have
Mhm.
families who travel, have hybrid schedules, flexible schedules. There's a world where traditional childcare is important for consistency, right? The Monday through
Mhm.
Friday, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, Tuesday, Thursday. But the fact is post-pandemic, there are hybrid schedules. Families are traveling more. They want flexibility. And so Bumo allows you to create your own childcare adventure. So if you want to book 6 months in San Francisco or 6 months in LA, you could do that with Bumo. If you want to book Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because you are in office Thursday, Friday, you can actually do that with Bumo. Or some parents will choose a language immersion program on Tuesdays and Thursdays and do a forest school on Wednesdays, and they might have a nanny on Monday and Friday. It depends. Or like me, we do have traditional, school that my kids go to. I forgot to mention my kids in the intro. I do have two kids. Reagan is 8, Elliot is turning 7. And so when they're out of school, like next Monday, I can also book a camp for them that they like. Either it's coding or outdoor camp. So the modern parent is not one type of parent anymore. The modern parent has different needs, they have different schedules. And creating a sort of solution that's hyper flexible like Bumo, where you could literally wake up one morning and just book whatever you want if you're in our service area is really the future, I think, of childcare for a lot of modern families now.
Definitely. What's one mistake families often make when narrowing down their options? And I'll let all of you chime in on that, because I'm sure you've seen it all.
I mean, similar to what Kate said, just not having a preconceived notion about what they want versus kind of digging into asking themselves the real questions about how their life operates. I think sometimes it can just be sort of an obvious, like okay, well, this is the easiest path forward, or this is how I grew up, or what my best friend does, versus sort of sitting down with yourself and your spouse and thinking about, okay, how do we actually want this to operate? Do we want to manage someone in our home? Do we want to do XYZ commute? All of those things, I think, are sometimes things that people don't trust themselves to really dig into the hardest questions about how they really want to do it.
Right.
I wouldn't call this a mistake because I think it's really difficult. This is one of those things that you just don't know until you're so deep in it that you have to figure out how to course correct. But both Stephanie and I are actually also certified fair play facilitators. And if you're familiar with Eve Rodsky's framework and the Fair Play Policy Institute, a lot of the work that they try and drive forward is really empowering families to have conversations about the division of domestic and child care tasks as a family, as a unit. So I think knowing how to have those conversations and understanding that parenthood is more than just the care your child needs during the hours that you are working. There is so much that goes into it, and it's so critical to have conversations with your partner if you are co-parenting, or to think about solutions, whether it's a part-time nanny, a family assistant, a virtual assistant. What does it look like so that you have support? Because it's always going to be a never-ending and constantly changing, what's the word?
Target.
Moving target. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just making sure that you're giving yourself grace as you learn those changes and figuring out, not feeling like you're failing because you can't carry all of those plates that are in the air. No parent can do it alone. And it really can have downstream impacts on your mental health, your physical health, and your capacity for burnout if you don't have the support of a partner or your village in whatever form it takes.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of that too, I think there is a perspective on childcare that you need childcare when you are working, right? So this is your 9 to 5. That's when you need your childcare Monday through Friday. I think that there's a very healthy perspective on childcare that includes outside of those hours. I think that it's very healthy for parents to have childcare in the evenings, for them to have their own time on the weekends, for them to catch up. We see parents now booking on the weekends. And I love customer service calls, my favorite thing to do. So I call customers. I'm like, why did you book on this like Sunday morning? And one parent said, I just want to sleep. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
go, girl. And
Yeah. Some of the best
so
money I've ever spent. Saturday
So
afternoon babysitter.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's really, really important is thinking about, and again, not a mistake, but perspective, right? Is
Mhm,
childcare is not just when you need to work, it's you need
Yeah.
childcare for you, right? For your
mhm,
Yeah.
relationships
Yeah.
with other people.
Yeah. Or even if you want to hang out with one child one on one, once you
Yes.
have a second child or a third child, I think that's another thing. Or if you're if you travel a lot for work or what have you. Yeah, I think that's so important.
I also think
definitely.
I love that was such a hack and unlock for me when my mom lived close enough that she could watch our kids on date night, or if I brought a babysitter in, I would always have them come and we would do like early bird special date because it's
Hmm.
Mhm,
like 2 dates. You go early enough
Yeah.
quality time with your spouse, and by the time you come home, the kids are asleep and you get a
Yeah.
block of time to be alone and have
mhm.
quality time with your partner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Once families start touring daycare centers or interviewing nannies, I think it can get super overwhelming. I have a 3 and 4-year-old, and I didn't know what to ask. I didn't know what I was even supposed to be looking for. I had 2 kids during COVID, so it was kind of like I was just looking for somewhere that seemed clean and like they were following guidelines and yada yada. So, what are some of the must ask questions that you would, for any of you, that I guess I'll start with Kate, but that parents should always cover?
Yeah, I think it's really important to get a sense of how they, as a caregiver, what their philosophy is around supporting a child's development through everyday tasks. So, getting a
Mhm.
sense of how they like to structure their day, and how that sort of resonates with you if you're coming in with preconceived ideas of, how you want things to run in your home, or if you want to be more collaborative, if you want someone who has a specific background, specific credentials, early childhood education. It can vary. Um, I also think it's really helpful to, if they're able to share an example of a time where they've had to make a quick decision or handle an emergency or an unexpected situation, just understanding like what happened, how did they think about it. I think it's really helpful to talk through those scenarios to understand how they like to approach things like that, and have a dialogue around how you would want to approach certain things. I would always say with our nanny, in an emergency, your first call is 911. Call us once there is care on the way. And I
Right.
think just having that safety protocol in our home made me feel more comfortable, and our nanny have a better understanding of where we sit on that front. Um, Also understanding, what inspired them to become a caregiver, what their long-term goals are. It's helpful just to understand, I've had career nannies in our life. I also had an amazing part-time nanny who was building um, her wedding planning business on the side, and is like a thriving, amazing wedding planner if anyone is looking for a wedding in California primarily. And the last thing I would say is when you do reference checks, make sure that you get to know the family that you're talking to, because someone can give
Mhm.
a glowing review, but the way that they want their family and their support run could be very different from what you might need. So it's really helpful to understand what success looks like when you're checking references for someone that you're trying to hire.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Lauren, key questions parents should be asking when they tour a center. Kind of
Yeah,
how
I
can they
think
go beyond the
yeah, I think
brochure or your
similar
basics?
similar to Kate, asking teachers what they love about teaching. I think sometimes, we've all probably been to parent teacher conferences or even interviewing a caregiver or a teacher who is a little bit uncomfortable in front of adults, but glows with children, and that's what you really want them to do. So
Mhm.
I think the quicker you can get them talking about kids and what they love about their job, and activities that they've planned and creative ways that they've organized their classroom and things like that, the more um the better sense you'll get of how they actually are working in that environment. And the same goes for a head of school or an ed director or whomever you're talking to. And then I would also ask a lot about, I think, some of the biggest hard things, either in a nanny situation or in a daycare early education situation, come with communication. And so getting really digging in about what are the best ways to communicate with the school? How are they going to communicate with you? Are you going to have direct access to your teacher? Are you going to be communicating through an administrator? Do they have, like, for instance, we have an app called Bright Wheel that where teachers send photos and videos of children and updates throughout the day. I think similarly with a nanny, you know, setting expectations around, I would love to receive photos of my child throughout the day, or I would not because that makes me sad, or
Mhm.
what have you. Or like if my child has a milestone at school, are you going to text me, or would I prefer not to know that and see it from the first time myself? So little details like that, I think, can really bring a visit to life. And then um, and then I think, you know, I think the most important advice that I've ever heard, and I won't take credit for it, came from a woman named Lauren Smith Brody, who wrote a book, an amazing book called The Fifth Trimester. And really, that the best caregiving and education solution for your child is the one that you as a parent feel most comfortable with. You know, I think from an early age, it can be hard to, you know, you're trying to sort of figure out, is your kid a Montessori kid? Are they, you know, do they need structure? Do they not? But in reality, the nuts and bolts of caregiving at that age are, I would say, mostly based on parents' comfort level.
Mhm.
And so just really being honest with yourself about how you feel um, in that environment is a really good first step towards figuring out if your child will thrive there.
I would
Mhm.
add, and it's okay to change your mind
Mhm.
100%,
and
100%. Yeah.
expect to change your mind. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Joan, since Bumo does have so many different options and like
Mhm.
it's so flexible, what questions should parents have in the back of their minds, like, you know, when it's happening and when they're kind of
Yeah,
doing their
yeah.
research and stuff?
Absolutely. So I think, you know, a key thing is like what interests your child, right? Especially because we have such flexible options. So dropping off a child at a location that is a little bit more structured and academic for a child who actually would do a lot better at a forest school that's a little bit unstructured and child-led. I think that's really important is, you know, as a parent, you know your child best. And you know, filtering through locations that fit those needs. We also had a brick and mortar location before, and this is how Boomo started. And so my experience there, I was actually the head of school at that location. And I think, you know, a few other questions that I would ask too for parents who are looking for more traditional childcare is, and this is sort of a tough question to ask, but I think a very important question is how do they handle conflict, right? When there is a situation, because kids are developing, kids are learning, they're growing, and what is their perspective on that, right? So that's very important. I think another element too that I really care about is parent community. I think that schools with
Mhm.
strong parent community is just have happier kids. There's that sense of sort of loyalty to each other, that sort of group camaraderie that's really important. So how do the schools or the preschools or the daycares foster that parent community? I know at our location, parents went to happy hour. You know, on weekends, they would have brunch together. There were two moms
Mhm.
that became best friends and went salsa dancing every single Thursday after they
Oh,
took
that's
their
so
kids
fun.
home. So those are special moments that I think
Mhm.
beyond the classroom created the whole experience. So I think
Mhm.
those are important questions to ask too.
Definitely. It's such a like weird, not weird connection, but it's such a common thing between parents is
Yeah.
like, I just want to
Yeah.
find the best care for my kids. And like,
Hmm.
so do you.
Hmm.
So let's be friends. And
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and you can
definitely.
always, even as a prospective parent, I think it's good to remember that you can always ask the school to be connected to a family in your age range that you're
Hmm.
about to join, or someone that would be in your classroom. And then another thing that forgot to say earlier was that not just visiting or touring the classroom or age group that your child will be in, but then also thinking about the next step and whether you want to
Hmm.
grow in that environment and how they handle growth at that next stage, I think is really important.
Definitely. Okay, so talking a little bit about cost, and we all know that childcare is very expensive, and it's a major investment. So, like thinking about how parents can kind of balance their budget, their need for flexibility, and like then their desire for that specific care. So, Joan, what creative solutions are available for families who need flexible care without sacrificing like that really good quality?
Yeah, so I think for Bumo we have a vetted marketplace, so I think that's really important. There are a lot of
Hmm.
marketplaces that don't do vetting. So for Bumo, every single location is vetted by Bumo. We have we call it the 4 Cs that we go through. I think we work with a lot of licensed in-home and center-based facilities. Licensing records are public record. Any parent can look at a licensing record of any single location. So that's, really important in terms of understanding and finding the best of the best in terms of that flexibility. In terms of cost flexibility, Bumo has a range of locations. So we have camps that are $9 an hour and drop-in micro schools and daycares that are, $20 to $25 an hour. So
Hmm.
I think, through Bumo, they can find vetted locations, do their own research as well. We also review all the licensing records. And then from there, you filter through what fits your budget, what fits your schedule. And that's how we afford that sense of flexibility.
Very cool. Kate, some realistic ways to manage nanny costs. I know that I think some people associate a nanny that's in your home all the time with being like the most expensive option. And so what are like the trade-offs that might be involved
Yeah.
with that? And um,
Sure. Well, I think, one thing that I really wish that I'd known as a mom sooner is that it's so important to think about support as more than just a line item in your budget.
mhm,
I think it's really an investment in your family's well-being and their future. And it's really easy, especially if you're in a partnered relationship, to think about support in terms of how much hired help or childcare costs versus one person's salary.
mhm,
And the reality is that, if you're investing in help, even if it's part-time, it's an investment in your career. If you choose to lean into that, it's an investment in your mental and physical health and your financial future. So I think
mhm,
it's really important to have these conversations, and figure out, what works best for your family based on your needs and your budget and what's feasible where you live. But I think there's ways to think about it from a scheduling perspective. For me, I cobbled together. I was lucky enough to have my mom close by, so she was able to help a couple of hours a week.
mhm,
I had more flexibility because I was a remote employee at Meta at the time, during the earlier years, so we were able to do a part-time nanny. So I think exploring a part-time nanny is possible. You can go down the au pair route if you have the space to potentially accommodate and the desire to accommodate someone in your home. That is
mhm,
another cost-efficient option that you can explore. Um, and then there are other options like opting for a nanny share with another family. So you can either identify a family who has opposite needs. So you need Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they need Tuesday, Thursday, and you share that nanny across the week, or you have the same needs Monday to Friday and you decide we'll host the nanny at our home or their home, and you figure out how to mitigate those costs together. So there's definitely certain trade-offs in terms of will occasionally have less flexibility depending on which path
mhm.
you take. And you'll need to figure out alternative options potentially when your nanny isn't available and you're sort of relying on your own or your spouse's or partner's flexibility to lean in. Um, and then lastly, I would say you can also, especially if you're employing a career nanny, if you have a deeper understanding of their career or education goals, if you're able to offer things like an education stipend or support that can be tax deductible,
Mhm.
as well as retirement contributions, if you decide to do something like that, or commuter stipends, there are certain sort of like tax things that you can do to mitigate some of the expense as well.
Definitely. Lauren, what is included in daycare tuition that parents might not realize they're paying for? And how can families kind of assess the value while they go through that
Yeah,
process?
so this is something that we focus on a lot because most of our campuses are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So
Wow.
really thinking about those extra hours that most parents need when we were talking about, just having that extra time for like a little bit of self-care, to be able to make a breakfast meeting, to be able to have flexibility around, going to the gym after work or what have you.
Hmm.
Things like that, I think are, or at least for us, the hours that we are open provide that additional flexibility and value to parents that I think, as we've been talking about a lot, you don't think that you need beyond 9 to 5, and then you get into actual life and pretty immediately realize you don't necessarily need it, but you would really like it.
Hmm.
And so I think having another thing that we talk a lot about is just reducing decision fatigue. So I think having one place where you are paying one set amount, and there's continuity of care. No one is going on. I mean, people are going on vacation, but we're managing that. You're not
Hmm.
managing that. Um, and then also, any once your child is in any kind of structured program, or even baby classes, you have a nanny, but then you also want them to go to a music class with their friends to
Hmm.
socialize, or you start a part-time preschool program, and then there's after school things, and then you need a babysitter on top of that. So I think just, and fair play, so awesome that you mentioned that, Kate. Again, being honest about all of the different little costs and
Hmm.
talking to other parents about things that you might not, as an early days parent or as an infant parent, you won't realize how much that's going to quickly add up when your kid is
Hmm.
2 and you want them to socialize more and you want them to go to XYZ class. And so just being honest about, do I want an all-in solution, or do I need more flexibility, like Joan was talking about, for parents who have more flexible schedules, then that, shuttling between different places or having a part-time help and then some classes absolutely makes sense. But I think there are a fair amount of things that just add up.
Yeah.
How is my nanny going to get to that class? Do
Hmm.
I live in a city with public transportation? Do I have to pay for their subway card? Do I have to pay for their gas? Things like that. Whereas in a daycare setting, it's all baked into one.
Hmm. Yeah. So that's kind of some of those hidden costs that families might not expect when kind of choosing care, which is
Hmm. hmm
it's hard
Yeah.
to know. You
Yeah.
budget
Paying,
for
I
one
mean,
thing and then you're like,
right,
oh, whoops.
right.
Yeah.
Paying, is food included?
Hmm.
Snacks? Am I feeding a caregiver? Um, am I packing a lunch for my child? Things like that.
Hmm. Definitely. So kind of transitioning into care once a family has chosen a provider, that first week or month even can feel so emotional. My sister is having a baby and she is already like exploring her childcare options. She's like, I can't even imagine like dropping him off, and she's not even like, starting even close to starting that. So um Joan, what is your best advice for like an easy transition, and like ideas for creating a smooth drop off, especially if they're going to kind of multiple different spots during the week?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that I know in theory, and there are also things that I know in practice. And
Yeah,
so,
right.
having again, we had a brick and mortar location before, and I was there all the time, and I saw all different types of kids, all different types of drop-offs, and
Hmm.
of course, like it goes down to you just know what's honestly best for your child.
Hmm.
There's the whole adage, quicker goodbyes make drier eyes. That can be true for some kids too.
Hmm.
I've seen kids have separation angst for a whole year straight, no matter what we did, right?
Hmm.
I had one little girl, it was always like, by the time she could talk at the end of that year, it was like, 5 minutes, Daddy, 5 minutes. So she would say that. Um, I think though, the separation angst if I had to be honest, I think it's harder for the parents than for the
Mhm.
kids. I tend to, before parents dropping off, I would hug the parents, especially the moms, and be like, "You're gonna be okay." And so
Yeah.
I'm here for you. And so
Yeah.
I think what makes it better is always, especially for littles, it's if you can ease into it, right? Shorter sessions, easing in it, talking to the kids if they can understand, like, this is what's going to happen, this is a routine,
Mhm.
and then making it a routine. I think a lot of times when parents confuse the children, they get by coming in, checking in on them, coming back out and checking in again, they do get confused. And I know as a
Mhm.
parent, I know how good that makes you feel too, because you want to
Mhm.
check in on your child. That does cause some confusion. So that's where like more of this our standard care before. I think for the on-demand care, it's interesting, like because the parents are committed to dropping their kids off at different locations, and parents typically pick their top three locations. So it's not like a different place every single day.
Right, right.
The parents are already predisposed to, I'm okay leaving them at different
Mhm.
locations.
Mhm.
I think kids tend to be very resilient and adaptable. I think if it's a location that's like a forest school or robotics camp, or a school with lots of outdoor play, a mud kitchen, and they do get so sad, maybe sometimes the first like 5 or 10 minutes.
Mhm.
More often than not, they're able to be redirected to something else
Mhm.
and have fun and enjoy. There are some kids who have a really, really hard time. That's very few and far in between. That's what I've seen
Mhm.
from our experience.
Yeah. So different how different kids are too. Like my oldest is like, see ya. I don't care where I'm
Yeah.
going. I don't know who I'm
Completely.
with.
Yeah.
And my youngest
Completely.
is like, wait, where are you
Yeah.
going? What? And
Yeah.
I'm like, your sister's
Yeah.
here. You're fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so with a new nanny, Kate, what does a successful week look like? I feel like we see a lot of questions in Augie asking about like boundaries and understanding like sometimes the nannies, since they're so involved in the family, can kind of like overstep. So what do you see a successful first week looking like?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say too, just my own experience with our preschool, or even when my oldest transitioned to kindergarten and after school programming, on the days that I felt the guiltiest, because I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm picking them up like literally 2 minutes before the end of the day. I wish I had
Hmm.
gotten there earlier. Like those were always the days that my kids would be like, oh, mom, you're here already. Like they were having the time of their lives. And I was kicking myself on the way there. Like, I'm such a bad mom. This is
Right,
terrible. So
right.
more times than not, when I felt the
Hmm.
most guilt, they were just having the time of their lives. Um, so for nanny care, I think and also I think really I would apply this rule to any care path that you choose. If you if you are returning to work, and even if you're not returning to work, start that care 1 to 2 weeks um, before your ideal timeline for start, so that
Hmm.
you have time to adjust to this transition too. Um, and I think, especially if you're bringing someone new into your home, you have an opportunity to really reinforce your shared values, your goals. You get to hopefully you've done a work trial before making an offer, so you've
Hmm.
seen the nanny interact with your kids and get a sense of how they approach their day. But it's an opportunity to really reground in the things that really matter the most to you, whether it comes to your daily routine, or how you like to think about your nap schedule, or if you're combo feeding or exclusively doing breast milk and you need support. For me, like, I started with breast milk, I transitioned to formula, but the bottles and the cleaning, like, it piles up, and having someone else to
Hmm.
help manage that, even just run the dishwasher once a day, it was like something that didn't even occur to me until I was in that moment, that like taking that off my list was an amazing thing. Making sure that you're communicating regularly and figuring out what works for you. So for me, my nanny and I, we loved to use the Notes app on iPhone. and just update like with if there were things that I wanted her, like maybe I started to fold laundry and I wanted her to finish and put it away, or there was clean laundry in the dryer that needed to come out, or if there was food I needed prepped, we could communicate if I was short on time and needed to get out the door. But I always made sure that we had at least 30 minutes a week that we could have a more deep dive check-in and talk about anything pressing or fun or lighthearted to catch up on. Um,
Hmm.
and I also think, what Lauren had said earlier about, really expressing what you want in terms of communication, because it's different for every parent. And I am one that like I erred on the side of send me all the pictures, like videos. It is my dopamine hit, and I will happily consume all of it. So just set expectations on how much information that you want, and just try and think through for you and your partner what the really like the most important principles are in your household, um and how you want to approach when misalignment occurs, because it
Hmm.
occurs in every aspect of your life. You deal with this at work, you deal with this with your partner. If you're in a partnered relationship, conflict is going to happen, and it's
Hmm.
healthy to address it. And by having these weekly check-ins, it's an opportunity. It's not like out of the blue, like, oh, we need to talk, we need to have a conversation. It's not a scary conversation. You can
Hmm.
have those, insert those moments in those regular check-ins to be like, hey, I'd really love if I noticed this happen. I'd love if we could approach it this way moving forward, or, finding ways to sort of talk through it in more of a neutral way, I think is really important to sort of set from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely agree with that. Lauren, when I'm sure you've seen it all also. So what are some tips? I was a teacher for 10 years and I had older kids, but I still felt like I never like nailed the communication with parents. And I mean, I taught special ed, so it was a little bit different, but
Hmm.
building trust with the caregivers and like having multiple teachers in a classroom, or um what can parents do to help their kids feel comfortable, but also like kind of let the day happen and
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, like, I mean, I'll echo everything that both Joan and Kate said, because I think it really is it it is harder for the parents than the kids.
Mhm.
A, a child teacher relationship is a symbiotic relationship. And they're usually really on the same page and having fun, and they're oriented towards the same things. And so
Mhm.
I think as far as drop off and sort of those initial moments, if parents can like really steel up their confidence and just feel good about the decision that they already made to enter into this group care environment, the more your child will feed off of that energy and feel excited, or, even if they're a little bit nervous, kind of go into it with optimism. And then I think as far as communication, it does depend on sort of the channels of communication that are open at whatever school you or daycare environment you're in. But,
Mhm.
for a school that has something like Bright Wheel, really being actively um, an active participant. So sharing, I think it really helps teachers get to know children at the beginning. If parents can share a little story from what happened over the weekend, or, share these details about, like, my child might get nervous at first doing X, Y, and Z, but here's a little tip of what has worked to get them into this activity or help with transitions or something like that. And just remembering that these people, truly, teachers and educators, have seen it all. You won't surprise them. And the more detail you can share about your child's
Mhm.
psychological and developmental health, the better they can do their jobs. And to share, that really become your partners in parenting, and it's
Mhm.
not just about meeting that next milestone, but it's also just about celebrating like little wins or funny moments or things like that. So I think um the looser and more close, sort of partnered you can feel with the more comfortable they do the children in their care. And it really becomes like a mini family extension. So
Hmm.
I think the more you can open up to that and just be yourself and be excited to be there, the better.
Yeah, definitely. Um, what's something you all wish parents knew about this adjustment period? Or what advice do you have for
Mhm.
someone who, because I imagine most people on this call are starting childcare or looking for it. Um, so maybe how long it could last, what can they do what can they
I,
expect?
I think it totally depends on the kid. I think
Yeah.
some kids, parents, and this is another misconception, I think, for parents that, oh, my child will never sleep in this environment. They won't get into a routine. It seems chaotic. It seems
Hmm.
loud. And then, you get that first picture of your child napping in like a relatively bright room or like with other things going on. And it's like the most amazing thing ever.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, just not having a lot of expectations for how long it's going to take. I
Hmm.
think sometimes my daughter sounds like my oldest sounds like yours, where I was almost like, wait, aren't you going to cry or anything? And she was like, bye. And it was
Yeah.
almost just like sad for me that there was no transition, or like other
Hmm.
parents were freaking out about like,
Hmm.
um, you know, uh, what's it called? Separation anxiety. And I was like, I don't even know what that is.
Yeah.
My child's been
Not a
like
problem
running away
here
from
right
me.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, but then with my younger one, I got it. So
Hmm.
I think just the less expectations you can have about how long
Hmm.
it's going to take or not take, the better, and just, letting your child lead.
Yeah, I think it's, every parent's so different, right?
Hmm.
And every child's so different. And I think having not lower expectations, but just not having expectations at all and just taking it day by day and kind of
Hmm.
meeting it where it is the best approach. Because my son, for instance, had a hard time in pre-K. It was a whole year of separation angst, and then it stopped, and then it came back. And when you have these expectations for what you think will happen, you as a parent set yourself up for disappointment, right? Because then you
Hmm.
feel like, did I do something wrong
Hmm.
to make this happen? And in fact, you probably didn't do anything wrong. It was probably just a developmental period for your child. Something happened, whatever it may be. And so I think not having exact and kind of like these kind of granular prescribed expectations is going to set you up for success, and just again meeting your child where they are that day or that moment, in terms of separation angst, is going to
Hmm.
be the best, because every kid is so different. I mean, my daughter will be like, see ya, mom, bye. And so, my son will be like, mommy, one more hug.
Hmm.
And so I think I think, to Lauren's point, flexible malleability is important here.
Hmm.
I would say, um, when I was going through the first transition to childcare for both of my daughters, Augie didn't exist. I wish that it
Hmm.
did.
Hmm.
Um, I think number one, how you're feeling, you are not alone in how you're feeling, and there are endless amounts of parents that have gone through or are going through what you're
Hmm.
feeling. So I think really take advantage of this community.
Hmm.
It's such a caring and welcoming community. And I think it's always felt to me like a really safe space to share what you're going through as a parent and always find someone to connect with in those moments. So I think, taking the time to also honor what you're feeling and give yourself
Hmm.
grace and figure out what your support system looks like is really important. And then the second thing, in particular for nannies, but I think this really applies to any form of childcare that you're looking for. Um, Finding care is a full-time job. It is not
Hmm.
treated that way, and no one, unfortunately, many of us have to navigate this alone. But
Hmm.
if you have the ability to really lean into it, dividing and conquering with your partner, or whatever your village might look like, if you think about like if you've ever hired for a role in a corporate space, you have a recruiter, you have someone researching market rates, you have someone who's screening, you have someone who does the initial interview. There's all of these things. Hiring a nanny or figuring out and researching a child care center or flexible option that works for you and aligns with your principles and philosophy is a lot of work. And
Mhm.
oftentimes parents are left referencing disparate resources across the internet, blogs, friends, colleagues, family members who've been there. And that in itself is a lot of mental labor, and it often falls on the shoulders of one parent
Mhm.
if you don't talk about it. And so I think it's really important to talk about it with your partner. And if you have the option of leaning into, there are resources I know that help with this with the childcare search. And in the nanny space, we have our DIY product, which has a roadmap of templates and all of the things you need to know if you're diving into hiring care in your home. So I would just say it's a lot, and don't underestimate how much work goes into it. Give yourself, I would say a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks if you're deciding to
Mhm.
hire a nanny to come into your home so that you have enough time to find what you need.
That was actually going to be my next question. Lauren, what is the timing for looking for a daycare center? And like,
It
because
depends.
all I
Yeah.
know about is like wait lists
Wait list.
and,
Yeah.
years of
Yeah.
like, you need to get in that preschool by next November if you want the year
Yeah,
after, whatever.
yeah. I mean, again, it depends on the campus. We have some
Hmm.
campuses that have long wait lists and some
Hmm.
that have availability, and it's very fluid. It depends,
Hmm.
because children are aging up in classrooms, or people's schedules change, or they move out of the city, or what have you. Um, there's always flexible things happening. So I would say my best advice is just the earlier the better. When,
Hmm.
of course, we have people who I think, we know they're pregnant before like their parents know. Um,
Right.
who do it right away and are sure what they want and get on the list, or register way in advance. And then people, obviously, sometimes, if you have a long parental leave, or you're just really not sure what you're doing until you really need it. So I think, again, like being flexible is key, but the earlier the better if you are even considering group care. Is what my advice would be. And until the very end, it's not binding usually. So you can get on a wait list. You can explore your options. You can tour before you.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I don't see any questions in the chat, but I think we covered a lot. Um, I guess I loved what you said, Joan, about like meeting your child where they are, but I feel like so much of
Hmm.
parenting is like meeting yourself where you can. And like
Hmm.
you talked a little bit about parents managing their own emotions when transitioning to outside care. Do you have any like pearls of wisdom as we leave today,
Yeah, I
going out
mean,
about it?
it's, I think Kate was saying, like, once you see the picture of your child being okay, like
Hmm.
gives you that validity. And we had to switch schools last month, and I was a wreck too. My kids are 6 and 8, and I didn't follow my own advice. And I was so nervous dropping the kids off at school, and stayed around campus for 2 hours, and they're like older now. Picked them up, and they were like, I made new friends. And just a tidbit that we don't have to go over in detail, we were impacted by the LA fires. And so my kids'
Oh,
school, yeah, also burned down. And so they had to switch schools. So
so
it was like
sorry.
it was a crazy moment. And they had to transition school. So it was like a big deal. And I was so nervous. And it was a different type of school. Our school was a
Hmm.
beautiful community, and it was so loving. And they went to now they're at this public school where they're one of hundreds of kids. And
Hmm.
my son's first day, he had a spelling test the first day, and I was like, oh my God. And so, and then I picked them up, and I was like, how was it? And they were like, I made 3 friends, Mommy. I have a best friend named Woody. And so
Oh.
I think I, I'm almost at a loss of words, because I want to tell you the advice that is in my head, that I've been preaching to
Hmm.
parents over and over again. But I I almost am at a loss of words, because every single time I could say the advice, but I would be judgmental to say, you must follow this advice. This is the
Hmm.
advice, because I, even 2, 3 weeks ago or a month ago, couldn't follow that advice. I was nervous to even send them to the cafeteria because I thought it would overwhelm them. So I picked them up before
Right.
lunch. And so,
Yeah,
but
your
anyway,
mom
I
gut
go
just
on.
kicks in and you just everything goes
Yeah.
out the
Yeah,
window.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's hard. And I just tell
Mhm.
parents, you know, there's gonna be your friend, there's gonna be the book, there's gonna be Dr. Becky telling you what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And you just do what feels right. And your kids
Mhm.
will be okay. And you will be okay.
Joan,
And that's my best advice.
we
Yeah.
were in Pasadena and our kids, their schools did not burn down, but they were closed for the full month of January due to smoke damage. And that was a big part of why we accelerated our move back to the East Coast. And I was so concerned. I was like, we're going to move in this. We were planning to move out here. We were going to move in the summer because I was like, I don't want to interrupt the school year. I want the
Oh,
summer. And I was so worried about interrupting the school year. And then the fires happened and we moved in the middle of the school year and it was amazing. They
yeah.
they were
Mhm.
it was like this special thing that they were the new kid coming and like the children were so welcoming and it was such an easeful transition. And I think it's you're so right. It's easy to get in our heads and like the mama bear to come out and
Hmm.
want to just protect your kid from all of the things that life can throw at
Mhm.
us. But just trying to
Yeah.
yourself grace is
Yeah,
all we can
exactly.
hope for.
Kate, we are neighbors then, or we were neighbors because I lived in Altadena.
Oh my God.
So just a
Yeah.
stone's throw. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean it's hard. It's
Mhm.
hard. And it's never easy. So we're sitting here with all of our experience, with 3 moms, 2 kids, tons
Mhm.
of experience, and we're still figuring it out too.
Right. That's so true. Well, this was wonderful. I feel like any childcare conversation is like you always leave feeling like, oh, okay, everybody's kind of going through it too. So, um, everybody, thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. I will send a follow-up DM in the Augie app with the recording in case you missed anything. And feel free to find Joan at boomo.com and Lauren at Vivi and Kate at Hello Nanny. And we will see you guys in the Augie app. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.